I'd actually like to get started. I'd like to invite our first speaker and doing our opening keynote, Nathen. Nathen doesn't need much of an introduction. He is VP of Community Development at Chef, and he has been essentially instrumental in building and developing community and ecosystem around Chef. So please, round of applause for Nathen.
Oh, there we go. And now? All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I am so honored and pleased to be here to be at DevOpsDays India. I don't know if you know this, but this is actually my second time at DevOpsDays India. But it's only my second time in the country. So a couple of years ago, I dialed in remotely to give a keynote for DevOpsDays India. It was, honestly, from my perspective, it was kind of a not great experience. I couldn't see any of your beautiful faces. I had no feedback while I was going. And of course, the internet connection wasn't great. So we lost my talk halfway through. Hopefully today, I'll remain with you for the entirety of the talk. All right. So, as was mentioned, my name is Nathen Harvey. Perhaps you know me from the Food Fight Show. Anyone listen to that podcast? Just lie. You can say, yeah, we listened to that podcast. All right. That will make me feel really good. And then, as he mentioned, I am also the VP of Community Development at Chef. You can follow me on Twitter if you'd like. I'm at Nathen Harvey, and it's NathenHarvey. Some of you maybe also know me because a couple of years ago I put out this webinar series on chef fundamentals. And I know I've spoken with a number of you this morning, and I know that there are people in this room who have been through that webinar series and actually learned chef from me. So today I'll show you some chef. I'll be here in person though. I won't be a little tiny square on your window. But if you have taken these, I just want to remind you that these were put out 4 years ago. So if you're still using these to learn chef, or if you have colleagues that are still using these to learn chef, there is a better way now. In fact, I would point you to a website called Learn Chef, learn.chef.io. This is our Learn Chef rally, and there you can get lots of tutorials on chef that are completely free. We give you infrastructure to play with, and in fact, we've just launched in the past year or so a certification program. So if you'd like to get chef certified, you can do that. If you stop by the chef booth, we'll tell you a little bit about that. But frankly, that's enough about me. You didn't come here to listen to my story. You came here to learn about DevOps. And so I want to share with you, I'm going to start off with a story of my first visit here to India. It was just earlier this year. I was here in July, and I went on site at one of our customers, and we were doing an event to talk about DevOps and to talk about chef. And the VP of IT at this particular company, I won't tell you which company it is. I will tell you his name is Ram Subramaniam. Ram Subramaniam. Perhaps you know him. Maybe I just told you which company it was, but I haven't yet, I promise. So he got up and he addressed his team. Now, this particular company is based in the US and has development offices here in India. They actually have development offices all around the world, but they have a big development center here in India. Just a quick show of hands. How many of you work right now, today, at a company that is not based here in India? Okay, so that's a little bit less than half. I'd say maybe 40% of the room or so. So maybe this story might apply to you. This was a telecom company, as I told you, and he got up and he told us this amazing story. He told us this story of how getting a home phone line in India works. How many of you have a phone at home? Like a landline. Okay, that's pretty cool. So here's the story that he told us, and I have no idea if it was true. I take him at his word. He said, you know, if you wanted a landline at your house in India, what you would have to do is go to the government and apply to have a landline installed at your house. And then you just had to wait 7 years for them to come and install that landline. But today, nobody cares about a landline at home. There were a very small percentage of the folks here actually have a landline at home. Why? Because we've jumped ahead. Landlines are obsolete. We're now all using cell phones. In fact, we have a computer in our pocket right now, or right in your hand right now, that is so powerful that we don't even need these landlines. And so the message that he was bringing, though, to his team, which I thought was super interesting and important, was this. As we are part of a larger global entity, we are not tied down by the legacy. We are engineers that are able to start working with the modern stuff today, start working as a modern team. We're not tied down to our legacy processes. We're not necessarily tied down to a lot of technical debt and legacy ways of thinking about how we build and deploy applications. So we here in India have the opportunity to jump right ahead and start working in all of the modern ways, with all of the modern technologies and all of the modern workflows, all of the modern collaboration that's so important to our industry. And to me, that was a really heartening message. And I thought that that was a great message for me to bring here to you today to DevOps Days. Because right here in this room, we are the future of technology. You are the future of technology. You are the future of how we are going to work together as a global industry. And so to me, that's truly what DevOps is about and what I want to talk to you about today. And so let's talk about what does it mean to be a modern technology team working in this industry. And for me, the first thing it means is that we know who our customer is. Our job as technologists is to deliver delight to our customers. And when I say the word customer, in the old school way of thinking, IT's customer was the business. I'm here to serve the business unit. That's not who our customer is, though. Your customer, our customer, are the people that are utilizing your organization, that are paying your organization money. And it is on us, it is our responsibility to understand what it means to delight them. It's our responsibility to know what they're after. Your job is not to spin up cloud instances. It's not to rack a server. It's not to configure that server. It's to delight your customers. And it is our job, of course, as technologists to understand what does that mean? What role do I play in that? And that's some of what I want to talk about. The applications that we're building today are getting way more complex. None of us today work on monoliths anymore. We're now all building microservices. We build microservices because we want to move faster. The technology has to move faster. We have to serve our customers better. With microservices, we can work in highly distributed fashions. The applications themselves are highly distributed, and in fact, our teams are highly distributed. How many of you work with one or more person that doesn't even live in India? It's a good number of you, right? Our teams are distributed. So how can we, as a team, work together with these highly distributed teams and highly distributed applications? We're also now dealing with so many more things than what our predecessors had to deal with, right? Those that came from the legacy world had many fewer assets, artifacts that they had to deal with. Today, we're in the cloud. Today, we're building microservices. Today, we're using service providers. We're using serverless, we're using software as a service, and so forth. And what we end up building is something that uses everything. Everything. This is what developers need. As we're building out applications to deliver to our customers, we need every framework under the sun, right? What is today? It's Friday. So there were 4 new JavaScript frameworks that have already been launched this week. Did you realize that? It's Friday. The 5th one will come out today. It seems like there's a new JavaScript framework every day. How do we keep on top of this? As developers, it's easy. We just keep using all of the new things. That's exactly what we need to build, to delight our customers. I would argue, actually, this isn't what developers need. This is actually just what they want. They want all of the new tech deployed everywhere because that's why we're in technology, to get to use this stuff. And then the next step is this is what they end up building. I'll just give you a second to look at this slide. I think it's kind of funny. And it is a joke. It's not a serious slide, obviously. So what does this mean for us? What it means for us is that we are building ever more complex applications, ever more complex infrastructure. Our teams look like this. Our applications look like this. And with DevOps, we have to figure out the right way to build this, to service our customers, and to scale it with our teams properly. So we're building all of this complexity when what our customers want is the ease of use. They want that amazing experience. They want to pick up their phone, call up Gojek, have food brought to them, have a ride come to them, whatever that happens to be. That's the experience that every one of our customers is after, and that's what our job is to deliver to them. And the only way that we can do this is by working with code. And so today, it doesn't matter what your job is. It doesn't matter if your job is a system administrator, if your job is an application developer, if your job is QA, security, whatever your job is, you are a software engineer. You are writing code on a daily basis. And if you're not writing code every day today, you will be soon. You will be managing code, writing code, and so forth. And when we write code, where do we put that code? Where does it go? Source control, right, exactly. That is the most fundamental thing. Which version control systems, which source code control systems do you use? Tell me. Git, what else? SVN? And all right, there's a couple out there. How many of you, just a quick show of hands, are using the BAK version control system? Do you know that one? Not everyone does. It's where you take a file and you copy it to filename.bak, and then you modify the file. You all know that one? So how many of you are using the BAK version control system? I think you're lying. Yeah, you're brave enough to tell the truth. Yes. I know you are, and I know people in your company are. While we were setting up this morning, I had a chance to look into each one of your inboxes, and I found a common theme. Everyone in your inbox has emails with files attached, and those files have names like blah, 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 underscore final, blah, 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 underscore final July 2017, blah, 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 underscore final July 2017, underscore Nathen, right? How many of you have one of those in your inbox? Yeah, I know, I saw. So version control, we have to really think about this. We have to, as we're writing code, as we're working in a modern way, everything that we're doing is automated. The only way that we can scale out our teams, scale out our applications, deliver to our customers is by automating. All of that automation starts by writing code. Writing code of one flavor or another. Writing code for our applications, writing code for our infrastructure, writing code for our pipelines, writing code for provisioning our systems. Everything starts with code. And the minute you write a line of code, you have to put that into a version control system. And so it doesn't matter. I don't care if you're using Chef, if you're using Ansible, whatever. If you're writing code, put it into a version control system. A proper version control system, not the BAK version control system. That is not okay. And we do this because over time we know that our code is going to change. We know our code is going to change. So because we know our code is going to change, we also have to be writing tests for our code. We have to follow some sort of test-driven development process. Now, I'll be honest with you. My job, before I joined Chef, I was managing infrastructure. I was using Chef to automate the management of that infrastructure. And people came to me and they said, Nathen, you have to write tests. Because you're writing code, what you need to do is write tests. And frankly, I was afraid to write tests. I'll tell you why. I was the sysadmin. I was the operations person. And a couple times a week, I would go to lunch with the developers. And at least once a week at lunch, the developers would spend the entire lunch break arguing about what's a good unit test and what's a bad unit test. How many of you have been in those conversations before? Yeah, exactly. So then they came to me and they said, Nathen, you have to start writing tests for your code. I said, what are you talking about? You guys argue about what's a good test and a bad test. I've never written a test in my life. I'm not writing tests. If I have extra time, I'm not going to waste it writing a test. I'm going to use that time and I'm going to write a better Nagios alert. It seemed right. It seemed good at the time, right? I know how to write some Nagios alerts. I know how to tell you when a system is busted. I know how to receive a page, right? That is all important to me. But this idea of writing tests, it's terrible. So I was very afraid of it until one day I got some really great advice. Someone told me the difference between a good unit test and a bad unit test. And it's very easy. If you're wondering, this is the difference. The good unit test is the one that you wrote and gets executed every time your code changes. The bad unit test is the unit test that you're afraid to write, that you're delaying writing, that you're saying, I'll just write a Nagios alert instead. That's a bad unit test. As it turns out, writing tests is no different than writing any other code. The first one you write is going to be bad. It's not going to be bad the minute you write it, but in 18 months' time, it's going to be bad. Because you're going to be better at your craft, because you're going to take on this idea of test-driven development and make that a practice. DevOps is a practice. Test-driven development is a practice. It's a thing that we have to do over and over again, and as we continue to do it, we get better at it. Now, in addition to arguing about what's a good unit test versus what's a bad unit test, I can't tell you the number of conversations I've been in where they argued about whether this is an integration test or is this a functional test. No, it's an integration. No, it's a functional, integration, functional. Doesn't matter. Write the test, execute the test. Have some high-level idea of what they are. I've given you a couple of definitions here. Now, it doesn't matter what type of application you're writing. Each one of the application frameworks that you're working in has test frameworks associated with it, and you need to exercise these test frameworks. Now, this morning I'll show you how we test some of these things using Chef. When I think of managing our infrastructure, when I think of infrastructure automation, your infrastructure is just another application. It should be treated no differently than the .NET application you're building, the Node application, the Java application, the Rails application. They're all just applications. And so first, we start with some static analysis. Static analysis is what we will do to look at the code. We will understand through our static analysis, does the code follow the best practices within our community? Does the code use the right syntax? And so within Chef, as we're writing Chef code, we have two tools that will help us with that. Cook style, which will look at the Ruby code that we've written to make sure that we're following good practices within the Ruby community. And then Food Critic, which will take that same code and look at it to make sure that we're following the right practices that are laid out within the Chef community. And again, it doesn't matter what code you're writing. You should have some sort of static analysis. The beauty of static analysis, as you saw, it was very fast. I just ran 2 suites of tests. It took virtually no time at all. This is something that I can get continual feedback on as I'm developing applications. Now, as we move beyond static analysis, we get to our first real testing framework, if you will. That's that unit test. Let's look at each piece of the system. Let me test each method. Let me test each object that I'm building or each function that I'm building. And in the Chef world, we have Chef spec, and this is what it looks like. I can execute tests against my infrastructure code. This is going to look across a particular cookbook. I'm going to use the Chef client cookbook here as an example. And the idea behind this is, as a developer, as I'm writing out this code, I get that immediate feedback. This code does what I expect it to do. So right there, I just ran 47 different tests. It took 11 seconds. I didn't even have time to get up and go get another coffee. And it's important, whatever testing, whatever language you're working in, you use these sort of tests. From there, we want to move on to integration testing. Now, I apologize, this might be a little small to read, but within our infrastructure code, it's nice to do unit testing, but we have to make sure that that code is going to do what we expect when it gets to our production environment. How many of you test in production? Look, let's be honest, we all test in production. But hopefully not the way as normal you test in production. Hopefully what happens is that we're testing as we get to production. So within the Chef community, within the Chef world, as we're managing our infrastructure, we want to take the policies that we've written and run them on real infrastructure that's not our production environment. That's where a tool called Test Kitchen comes in. So this integration test was just brought to us by Test Kitchen. And what happened in that test was we spun up a virtual machine, we laid down the Chef code on that, executed the Chef code, and then ran some verification tests against that. And all of that took, it's even so small, I can't even read it. I don't know, it took a minute. It took a minute for me to get a virtual machine, put some code on it, execute that code, and validate the results. I've been in organizations where the idea of getting a virtual machine meant waiting days, maybe waiting months, weeks. Hopefully that's not your state, right? We have to be able to spin up these things at will, right on the spot. How many of you in here work in QA? Anyone? Okay, a couple of people work in the QA department. That's awesome. The role of QA has fundamentally changed. In the past, quality was the job of the QA department. As a developer, I write the code, and I hand it off to the QA department, and they'll find all the bugs in it. And this is a really bad process. This is terrible. The job of QA has fundamentally changed. It's not that QA is not important. QA is just as important as it's ever been. It's just that the job has changed. It's no longer your job to find the quality errors. And in fact, when we have individual QA departments, I have a department that's set up for QA, we're setting up bad incentives. We're telling our developers, don't worry, someone else will find that bug for you. That's what a QA department does. Developers today, as you're writing code, you must be writing your own unit tests. You must be running those tests locally, and then you put this code into a pipeline. The job of QA is now to come and be a partner, be an advocate for how do we write better tests. Now, as I was putting together this presentation, I found that there's this candy. Have you ever seen this candy before? From Nestle. It's called Quality Street. And I thought, that would be great. If I was in the QA department, what I would do is carry around a tin of Quality Street candies. And when I found a developer that I sat down and paired with and helped that developer write a better test, we'd give that developer candy. That'd be awesome, wouldn't it? Wouldn't you like it if your QA department came bearing candy instead of anger? That would be great. That leads us to the 4I rule. So the 4I rule says this: look, you've written code, you've run the tests, but that code should not get into the production environment before at least 4 eyes look at it. We have to do some code reviews. Code reviews are a great time for QA to come back in. Code reviews are also a great time for another developer to look at your code. I spent a lot of my time building and working with teams that were building Ruby-based applications. Any Ruby developers in the room? A couple. How about any Perl developers? Any Perl developers in the room? Yeah. So one joke that you'll sometimes hear about Perl is it's a write-only language, right? Because you can never go back and read your own Perl code and understand what you were doing. And the beauty of Ruby is that you have a bunch of meta programming, so you can do so much stuff with Ruby that's all meta. And the problem with both of those things is you're going to have to troubleshoot that code in the future. You're going to have to refactor that code in the future. So you can utilize peer review to make sure you're not being too clever in your code. Peer review, code reviews are really to help your future self when you come back to code review that. Now, after we've written this code, the next thing that we do with modern applications is we have to build an artifact. So we take this code, we take it out of the repository, we run through some build process that generates an artifact, and then we publish that artifact up to an artifact repository. Something like Nexus, Artifactory, could be an S3 bucket, doesn't matter. Now I want to show you a new project that we've been working on at Chef, and we're happy to talk to you about it at the booth, called Habitat. Habitat is how we can build, manage, and run applications. So let's just look at a build process from Habitat. Whoops, yes, there is a demo. Oh no, there was a demo. Apparently I put it in the wrong deck. So that's okay. I'll come by the booth and I'll show you the demo of packaging an app in Habitat. And you can imagine, just close your eyes for a second, and imagine that you just saw a package get packaged up beautifully with all of its dependencies. It felt so good. It looked so great. Right. So we now have this artifact and we're ready to deploy it. But there's a problem, and it's security. Security has come in and said, wait, before we go to production, we have to make sure that this artifact is good, that this application is good. How many of you in here work in security? One or two people? Like, it's less than QA. All right, so just for a quick aside, we need to make sure that we have the quality teams here, the QA teams here, and the security teams here. DevOps is not just for developers and operations, it's for all of us. So security comes along and they want to stop the release. We've done some research that says InfoSec inhibits our speed. If we ask, and we didn't do this research, someone else did, but 81% of IT professionals think that InfoSec inhibits speed. And the weird thing about that is 77% of InfoSec professionals agree. Yep, we think we inhibit speed. But I think of that 77%, there's a very small percentage that's like, yes, we're slowing down the organization. InfoSec, just like the rest of us, knows that in order for us to compete in this world, we have to be able to move faster and deliver to our customers faster. But this is what security reviews often end up feeling like, right? We've got this great idea, we're ready to ship it to production, but there's that security guard. I had to like zoom way out. So he's standing down there at the bottom of that dam. Well, this is a problem. We want to make sure that our infrastructure, our applications are, in fact, secure. And we can't just block everything with a security review. So we have to find a better way to automate that. So I have a demo for that, and it's not right here. So I'm going to find that demo for you. Just give me 1 second. There it is. I don't know if you saw which file I opened there, but I have two files on my desktop. One is called DevOpsDays India Keynote, and the other one is called DevOpsDays India Keynote All the Slides. So I should probably share all of the slides, not just some of the slides. So we're in the right deck now. We could go back and view the Habitat demo, but I'm just going to keep pushing forward. Here's our automated test for security. This is using InSpec. InSpec is another framework we've been working on to help automate those tests around security and compliance. So here I'm going to run InSpec against a local machine and find that my SSH is not hardened. In fact, I have 61 failures. If I were to log into Chef Automate, I can actually have visibility of that across my entire fleet. So here I'm just going to look at a single node, but we can see that there were failures happening across this node. All this is showing me is that my SSH is not configured in a way that is secure. I'm not following my own policy. So we can, of course, remediate that using Chef. So I'm now going to execute a cookbook against that same machine, apply an SSH hardening cookbook or an SSH hardening recipe, which is going to go in and update the way that that machine is configured. I can then re-execute those tests and see that I have 100 successful tests passing now. I'm completely passing that hardening profile. Now, the really nice thing about InSpec, there are a couple of things. First, I can now start to run security tests in the same way that I run unit tests. My developers run those right on their laptop. Second thing about InSpec that's very cool is that there are profiles that are shared within the community. As a community, we can continue to contribute to these profiles and help each other be more secure in the infrastructure and the applications that we're running. And then the other awesome thing about InSpec is my colleagues Victoria and Hannah are going to give a talk about it tomorrow morning. So make sure you come back and you'll learn more about InSpec. But this opportunity, this idea of automating compliance is huge. It's huge for us as an industry, and it's a great place for you to get involved in the community. Let's help each other make our systems more secure so that we can ship our code and be happy about it. Now, I've talked a little bit about technology. Technology is important. Technology will help us move faster and deliver to our customers, but we also have to change the way that we're working. Make sure that we're working in a modern fashion. As we're building these applications, of course, they're going to go through a pipeline. What we want to put through that pipeline are small changes so that we can be continuously delivering value out to our production environment. But as we're doing that, we also need to change the way that our teams work together. And one of the most important things that we can do to improve the way our teams collaborate is make the work that we're doing visible. Across an organization, it should be very clear what everyone is working on. By using technologies or tools like a Kanban board, we can start to change the way that we work. We can work in a way that is pull instead of push. We can work in a way that provides visibility. We can work in a way that is, makes it clear where our bottlenecks and constraints are. By using a Kanban board and organizing your work to care about the entire system and care about flow, we step away from this idea of, I have to make my part of the process better. Of course, you have to make your part of the process better, but what really matters is how quickly does work flow through the system. That's what we need to worry about. That's what we need to concern ourselves with and work on the bottlenecks there. Now, this is a picture of my children and some nieces as well. I put it in here for a couple of reasons. One is I could tell a story, but I'm running a little, like I'm halfway through my time, so I'm not going to tell the story. So they're here right now just to give me confidence and to remind me why I do all of this. I do all of this work for my children. I hope you do as well for your family. So there you go, some gratuitous picture of my children. I hope you enjoyed it. All right, so we're on this journey, right? We want to get our idea into production. So we're starting to build with high velocity. But you know, the thing is, most applications spend very little time between idea and shipping. And that maybe sounds odd. It doesn't take very long from idea to ship. But the truth is, when we think about the life cycle of our application, the time it takes to build that application should be relatively short. We want that application to live in our production environment, delivering value to our customers. That's when it matters. And so really, DevOps is not just about how do we build things faster. We want to ship things faster, sure, but it's in the operations that it matters. It's when when our customers can use the applications that matter. So we want to make sure that the applications we're building are truly operable applications. And this means that we have to make some architectural choices about the applications at the very beginning. We want to make sure that we're building applications that are isolated, applications that are immutable. Once I package up that application, I don't have to change it. I can run that same artifact anywhere. I want, though, at the same time, to be able to configure those applications. I want my applications to provide telemetry so I can make the work visible, not just the work that we're doing, but what sort of work are my applications doing in the production environment. All of these are concerns that we have to be thinking about as we're building out applications. And Habitat, one of the projects that we've been working on, will help you with all of these concerns. And so stop by the booth, we'll tell you a little bit more about that. But when it comes to running our applications, every application goes through this process: build, deploy, run. So we have to ask ourselves, all of the things that we do, how can we shift them to the left? How can we move them earlier in the process? We all know, as an industry, we know that finding a bug in production is much more costly and expensive than finding a bug during design. And the same is true for everything that we're doing. Making a better architectural decision is better than having to automate around a bad architectural decision. Building an application such that it has all of its dependencies captured within it is better than having to install those dependencies at runtime. Testing for security, testing for compliance during our build process is way better than waiting until we get into production. So of all of those activities that you're doing to make sure that you get your applications out to production, think about how can I shift those activities to the left? How can I move them earlier in the pipeline? It's a good mindset to have as you're thinking about building those applications. And at the end of the day, remember who we're here to deliver to. We're here for our customers. Who is your customer? What are you trying to deliver to that customer? What experience does that customer want? And the idea behind DevOps is that we don't worry about what is the organizational structure. What we care about is how do we deliver to our customers. And we bring together the proper organizational culture and structure to deliver to those customers. And here we have a great opportunity to work together and to collaborate on delivering that value. Now, as technologists, there are three big software success metrics that we look at. How do we deliver to customers, right? If the job, the experience that your customer wants is I press a button on my phone and food arrives at my door, we're technologists. We're not going to be the ones delivering that food. But what we can do is we can provide the speed, efficiency, and risk within our applications, within our infrastructure, to help deliver that faster, more efficiently, and with less risk to our customers. We can allow the business to get much shorter feedback cycles. And so when it comes to each of these, we need to start thinking about the metrics that we're looking at as well. So when it comes to speed, we can ask the question, how long does it take from the moment I commit a line of code to the moment that line of code is in my production environment? How long does that take? And how can I decrease that amount of time? And what you'll find in answering that question is that, again, it's not just technology. Sure, I need to have a pipeline that's going to provide the movement from commit into production. But I also need to think about smaller changes that I push out to production. And now if I think about smaller changes, I also have to go back to the architecture of my application. Maybe I need to have some sort of feature flags in my application, such that I can deploy a feature just to a small number of customers first. This will help me decrease my risk as well. So I have to really be good at all three of these things. I have to be able to move fast, ship ideas fast. I have to be efficient about it. And some of the ways that we can measure efficiency, one way, how many of your changes that you push into production cause an issue, cause an outage, have to be reworked? Every time that happens, we're not being efficient. We have to end up doing rework. That's not delivering value to our customers. The other thing that we can think about in terms of efficiency is how long does it take us to resolve those issues when they do come up in production? How do I resolve an outage? How do I resolve an incident? And again, it comes down not just to technology, but also to how we work together. So think about, as an example, how you do postmortems. How do you learn from incidents when they occur in production? And who's involved in that? And I'll have some more words on that in a bit. And then finally, we want to make sure that we're decreasing our risk as well. We can decrease our risk by doing things like improving our time to detect. How do I know that I have an issue? One way I can improve my time to detect is by having better testing earlier in my process. And I have a question for you. When's the last time at work you celebrated a failure? Something broke and you went around the office high-fiving and giving each other hugs. I had a very recent experience with a customer. We released some new software. And as happens, that software had a bug that impacted this particular customer. And they called us up and they were rather angry. Hey, that release you just shipped, it just broke everything. We're like, whoa, all right, we're here to help. Your production environment's down, let us help you. No, production's fine, but our developers can't do any work. The pipeline is totally broken. I said, great, let's celebrate that. Let's think about how you were 18 months ago. You would have consumed that new software in your production environment and production would be down. So think about this right now. Your developers can't work. That is bad for the developers. That is costing you money, absolutely. But your customers are having the same great experience that they had yesterday. They have no idea that that's down. Let's celebrate that. Let's celebrate the fact that we detected that failure so early in the pipeline. That's really exciting. And it takes a change in mindset to think like that. But it's super powerful. So we need to increase our speed and efficiency while we decrease our risk. We need to increase the rate at which we can deploy. We need to decrease how frequently we have to rework things after we've deployed them because they broke something. We have to decrease our time that it takes to resolve issues in the production environment. Decrease our time to detect an issue. And then also we have to increase the rate with which we're auditing, the rate with which we're testing. And that audit, that test happens early in the pipeline. It happens all the way through to production. So this also informs us around the sort of telemetry that we need out of our applications, the sort of monitoring that we need. I don't know about you. In fact, I'm sure this has never happened to you. But I will tell you in my experience, sometimes Twitter tells us about production outages before our alerting systems do. Again, I'm sure it's never happened to you. But we need to get better than that as an industry. And we need to be thinking about this idea of continuous improvement. Continuous improvement. If we start measuring those software success metrics, if we start thinking about how are we performing as a team, if we're honest with one another and start learning from one another, we can get to this place where we are continuously improving. We're getting better on all of those metrics all the time. And the idea is that it's continuous, and the idea is that it's everyone. It's everyone. Some places I go to, some customers I get to meet with, maybe where you work, they have an innovation lab, and that's where all the innovation happens. If you work over here, it's not your job to innovate. Don't get better. That happens only in the innovation lab. You can make an appointment, book a meeting, and go over here to the innovation lab. Now it's Wednesday, I can innovate. That's Thursday, I got to go back to the old way. That's not how it should work. Continuous improvement is all of us. We all need to be thinking about this and improving all the time. And it's not just our technology. It's our culture as well. The way that we work together. The culture that we want to have within our company can help amplify and reinforce the technology choices that we make. Those technology choices will reinforce and amplify the culture that we make. To try to separate the two, we want to do DevOps, so we're going to buy some Chef. Now we're DevOping. It's not how it works. It's not how it works. You have to couple the two together. You have to use technology and culture to amplify and reinforce one another. And the way that we do that is we build a community. We build a community of people that are within our organization to help the organization get better. As individuals, we come to things like DevOps Days and we participate in the larger DevOps community. Every single one of us today is here to learn. We're all here to learn from one another. And each and every one of us has a story to tell and has the opportunity to help someone else learn something. You maybe just got out of school. This is your first job. This might even be your first conference. You might feel like you don't have anything to teach anyone here. I say you're wrong. We can all learn from you. You may be someone who's had 40 years in the industry. We can learn from you as well. We are all here together to learn from one another. When it comes to that community within your own organization, we have some software success metrics. We can hold up a yardstick and see, are we getting better or not? We should have the same capabilities for measuring our culture. How is collaboration going within my organization? And you can find that out by asking these 6 questions. Ask your teammates, ask your company to rate yourselves between 1, you strongly disagree, and 7, you strongly agree to these questions. On my team, information is actively sought. Failures are learning opportunities, and messengers of them are not punished. Responsibilities are shared. Cross-functional collaboration is encouraged and rewarded. New ideas are welcomed, and failures are treated as opportunities to improve the system. Think about these things in your daily work, in your daily practice. Think about these things across your organization. I'll take some time to just touch on each one of them. Continuous improvement. On my team, new ideas are welcomed. Continuous improvement is a practice. It can be very difficult to welcome new ideas. I have absolutely had the experience where I see over here in this thing, a process is broken. And I walk over and I say, hey, this process could get better if we do such and such. And when that person is open to that feedback, and we work together to improve that, that's where the magic actually happens. That can be super strong. And the idea of continuous improvement also requires that for a minute, you step outside of the four walls of your organization. You come to a conference like DevOps Days and hear how other people are approaching similar problems. Let's learn from each other. And as we're learning, of course, what we're going to do is share information. On my team, information is actively sought. Hopefully you're not in an environment where teams are hoarding information. Information is power, so I'm going to hide this data from you. As we're running in our production environment, our developers need to understand how are the applications performing in production. Where are their challenges? Where are things going well? How are our customers using the applications? When it comes time to doing our work, we want to make our work visible. We want to make everything visible. The metrics are reported and visible to everyone. There's a challenge, though, with this idea of transparency. In an organization where we make everything transparent, all of the data is available. The big challenge there is that transparency requires participation. It means that you have to go and consume that information as well. You also have to understand that sometimes, although you can now see the process, although you can now see the data, you may not have any more control over how that process works. That's okay. It gives you a better understanding, and then you can work better with that team. We have to align our incentives and objectives. So early on in my career, I worked for a supply chain software company, and our job was to help organizations manage their supply chain. We went into one company that was responsible for making breakfast cereal. And we talked to a couple of people at that organization to figure out what are your objectives? What does your bonus look like? And the first person we talked to was the person responsible for inventory. And she told us the way I get paid my bonus, the way my team gets paid a bonus, is when we keep our inventory levels very low. We want packages of cereal to just go processing right out to the stores. So that sounds great. That's good supply chain management. Then we went to the plant operator. His team was responsible for creating the breakfast cereal, right? It was made in a plant. And we asked him, how do you get paid? How does your bonus work? And the plant operator told us, me and my team, we get paid a bonus based on the tonnage of cereal we produce every quarter. So more cereal produced, the more it weighs, the more they get paid. So at the end of every quarter, he had a choice. He could make raisin bran flakes with raisins in them, or he could make a puffed rice cereal that's mostly air. Which thing do you think he made at the end of the quarter? The raisin bran every time, which meant him and his team got paid well. And the inventory manager and her team, they didn't get paid their bonus because at the end of every quarter, the raisin bran was stacking up on the shelves. This is just like some of the incentives that we set up between development and operations. We tell developers, your job, build new features. We tell operations, your job, keep the system stable. So you tell them no because you want to keep the system stable. That's what you get paid for. And you get frustrated by the department of no, and what ends up happening? Like, you work around them. That's not good. We need to align our objectives together. We need to go back to this idea that we're customer focused. We're delivering delight to our customers. You sometimes hear this when you do this idea of continuous improvement. I go over here and I say, hey, I think that this could be better if we changed it this way. If what you hear from that person is, go away, that's not your job. That tells you that this organization is not practicing continuous improvement. We have to share and collaborate with one another. This is the only way forward. Failure is an opportunity to learn. For me, there are a couple of things that really, as I worked in an organization, were truly transformative about how did we adopt this idea and this practice of DevOps. The first thing is simple. Well, it's simple on the surface. The first thing I did was I moved where I sat. I went and sat with the developers. I went to lunch with developers. Now, that's not always feasible. Sometimes you're on different continents, right? But I do want to encourage you to look around your office and step outside of the people that you work with and go have lunch with someone else. We have one customer, and they're based in the Netherlands. They are lucky in that most of their employees work in the same physical building. So they aren't a highly distributed company. But they do an amazing thing. First, they serve lunch at their office, which is good, like that makes sense. But what they do is they have one giant communal table. And when it's lunchtime, you go and you queue up, they serve you food, and you fill into the table. You walk to the end where the next seat is available and you sit down there. And what happens with that, depending on which time you get into the queue, you're going to sit next to someone different every single day. And you're going to have a conversation. You're at work, it's lunchtime, you're probably going to talk about the work that you're doing. Maybe you'll talk about your kids, who knows? But we start to get to know one another. Now this, of course, has nothing to do with failure, but this is the first step, I think, that is important to take if you want to transform and start thinking about collaboration, start thinking about DevOps. Go to lunch with someone else, someone that you wouldn't normally. Talk to them about what keeps them up at night, what's frustrating them at work, and share your same experiences and the things that are going really well. Now, the next thing that I think is transformative is that you improve the way you handle failures. When you have a production incident, have a good learning review or a postmortem. Get together the team. And by the team, I mean as many people as you can get. Oftentimes when we have production outages and we go in to learn from those production outages, we bring in the people that touched that production outage. And that's it. Who had their hands on the system to recover it? That's who we want to talk to. We need to open up those postmortems, those learning reviews to the entire company. Open them up as widely as you can. Get into a learning review or a postmortem and ask 2 questions. And there's only 2 questions that matter. How could we have detected this sooner? How could we have resolved it faster? These are the 2 questions that matter. Now, I take it a step further. On my team, we're responsible for managing the supermarket with Chef. It's essentially a software as a service. When it falls over, when we have an incident, I'll help facilitate, or someone on my team will help facilitate a postmortem. We do them via Google Hangout, and we stream them live to YouTube. I invite you into my postmortems. And that's a pretty incredible and powerful thing, because I can learn from my customers how they were impacted. I can understand that maybe they read documentation somewhere else that told them to do a thing that caused that impact to be worse. All of that has happened. Think about opening up your postmortems as widely as you can and truly treating them as an opportunity to learn. As you answer those 6 questions that we started with, talking about culture, you can start to map your organization into this topology of organizational cultures. There's a sociologist named Ron Westrom who put together this, and you will discover that your company is pathological, bureaucratic, or generative. Make no doubt, a company can be successful following any of these topologies. But when we talk about DevOps, when we talk about collaboration and learning from each other, we lean towards the generative culture, where there's high levels of cooperation, where we are learning from our mistakes, where we're sharing our goals and objectives, we're sharing our risks. We're truly building a community of practice around this idea of serving our customers, around this idea of DevOps. Now, when it comes to that community of practice, it does happen within the 4 walls of your organization and outside. Meet up with each other on Slack. Meet online, Slack, or whatever tool you use, IRC, it doesn't matter. Get your community together. I also, this may be the case here in Bangalore or in India in general, I'm not sure, but the city I live in, Washington, D.C., we have a DC Tech Slack. Any technologist in that community can join up into that Slack. There are channels there about DevOps, there are channels there about Node, about Rails, what have you. It's just an open Slack channel, open Slack team, anyone can join. It happens in cities all over the place. So if there isn't one here in Bangalore, I highly encourage you, set up, someone in this room, set up a Bangalore Tech Slack and invite everyone here. You can just run a free one, 10,000 messages, it's fine. Connect with one another online. Do this, of course, internally within your own organization. But above and beyond that, we have to meet in person. Come out to conferences, go to meetups. There are meetups here in Bangalore, I know that. Last time I was here, I was at one. It's a great opportunity for you to meet other professionals in our industry to learn from one another. And congratulations, you're here today, and you'll be here tomorrow to learn from one another. That's great. I also want you to think about open source. Open source and participating in open source is a great way to help build community. But open source doesn't necessarily mean code. Of course, open source means there's code that's written in the open that you may contribute to. But maybe you're not comfortable in that language or not comfortable in that framework, not comfortable contributing to that code base. There's always documentation. There's always issues. There's always ways for you to participate. And it's important to participate in open source because from an open source community, you can learn a lot about how to collaborate on a code base, how to collaborate with one another remotely, how to collaborate towards a common objective. And you can take all of those lessons and bring them into your own organization. How do we collaborate internally on code? We can take those open source learnings and bring them inside. So I want to close with a couple of things. First, a definition of DevOps. DevOps is a cultural and professional movement that's focused on how we build and operate high-velocity organizations, and it is born from the experience of its practitioners. It's a cultural and professional movement. It's not a tool you can buy. It is a cultural and professional movement. You are all part of that cultural and professional movement. It's focused on how we build and operate high-velocity organizations. Build and operate, dev and ops. But frankly, it goes well beyond dev and ops. If we want to build a high-velocity organization, we need to look across the entire organization. It includes HR. It includes finance. It includes sales and marketing and support and security and QA. All of us are part of DevOps. And it's born from the experiences of its practitioners. You are the experts at what it takes to make your organization high velocity. You know your systems, you know your applications, you know your customers better than anyone else. And you know what it means to work in the organization that you work with. It's not just the tools, it's also the culture, it's the people, it's the politics. You cannot hire someone from the outside to come in and tell you about that. It is your responsibility, and it's okay because you are the experts. You know how your organization works. You know what it takes to get from where you are today to where you want to be. Take a step every day. Continuous improvement. So, I'm going to leave you with this. These are things I want you to do right now. I want you to make sure that you know who your customer is. And that across your team, you have a common understanding of who your customer is. What are you trying to deliver to that customer? Next, I ask that you make your work visible. Start using Kanban boards. Start making your telemetry from your applications visible across the entire organization. Start looking after your customers and making that data available. I mean, that's not to say you should take your customers' personally identifying information and make that visible to everyone, right? Of course, there are some boundaries, but we want to make the work that we're doing visible. I want you to measure the progress. We can't know that we're continuously improving if we aren't stopping every once in a while to measure. if we aren't stopping every once in a while to learn. And finally, I ask that you participate in the community. You're doing that over the next 2 days. Take this time. This is special time. This is an investment that you are making in yourselves and in this local community and in the global DevOps community. It's important that you participate over the next 2 days, but that participation continues on after we're done here tomorrow. And with that, I would like to say thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your DevOps days.
Thank you so much, Nathen, for sharing your insights and experiences with us, and for configuring knowledge into everyone. So I am sure it has been of great value to everyone present here, and we really appreciate that. Thank you so much.